Hello and welcome once again to Let's Start Cooking. I'm Wayne, and if you're new here, thanks for joining us. And for those that are returning, welcome back to the channel. You know, I get it. Everybody today, we all know that prices are sky high when it comes to food, but we don't want to eat just bad food all the time. So I'm going to give you a recipe today where you can take a cheap piece of meat, cheap, inexpensive if you want to put it that way, and come up with a really good meal. And what I have is cube steak. Now, I'm sure if you've seen this in a store, you always see it looks like it was put through spikes. Mine just hasn't gone through the commercial machine that puts the holes in it, but this is what they call cube steak. As you can see, it's nice and thin. It's an inexpensive cut of meat, and what we're going to do is we're going to slow cook this to where you won't even need a knife. You'll be able to cut this with a fork. So the first thing that we're going to want to start with, though, is we're just going to lay this to the side real quick. We want to take our spices that we're going to put together to put on top of this before we actually pan sear this. So I'm going to have all the ingredients as usual in my description. But what we're going to start with is we're going to start with about a half a teaspoon of garlic powder, a half a teaspoon of onion powder. We have a half a teaspoon of paprika. We have half a teaspoon of chili powder. And last but not least, we're going to put in a little bit of brown sugar, which is about a teaspoon. And we're going to add salt and pepper to taste. Now I'm using about a quarter of black pepper, and I'm using about a half of salt. But again, this is to your taste. And we're just going to mix this up just so we get everything incorporated together. And we'll mix it up again once we get started. We just want to make sure that we get all these big lumps busted up right now. And once we get this done, we're going to set this to the side. So what we're going to do is we're just going to set this to the side for now, because we want to have two places to put this as we're going. Because what we're going to do is we're going to take these now, and we're just going to lay them out. And I did pat these down a little bit. I want these to have a little bit of moisture on them yet because we want to make sure everything sticks. But all we're going to do now is take our spices that we made, and we're just going to sprinkle it right over everything. Now, I would normally, if you're putting spices, you know, we put it in the flour so when we bread everything, but we don't want to like absolutely coat these like you would if you're frying chicken or something like that. So we want to make sure that we get our spices into the meat first. So we're just going to rub that on there like that. Because some of this will come off. Obviously, once we put it into our slow cooker, and it's going to go into our gravy that's going to be made with this. But we just want to make sure we get a nice coating on everything right now. And once we get this, we're just going to set this to the side and just let these work in a little bit. All right. Now what we'll do is we'll set this to the side. We'll let this work in a little bit, and we'll set up our pan and we'll get that nice and hot. Okay, we got our pan and it's getting nice and hot, and we've put about 2 to 3 tablespoons of olive oil in here. Now, you don't have to use olive oil. You can use any oil you have on hand. But now what we're going to do, we're going to take our cube steak and we're just going to put it right in our flour and make sure that we get it all coated. And we're going to shake off the excess, and we're just going to lay it right in. Now, when you're doing this, since these aren't very thick, we're not going to cook these very long. We're only going to cook these maybe 2 minutes on each side. And we just want to get a nice coating on them. Again, we're going to shake them off. And we only want to put maybe 2 to 3, depending on the size of your pan. We only want to put about 2 to 3 in a pan because we don't want to overcrowd these. And we'll just let these cook now. And again, 2 to 3 minutes, if that. We just want to make sure we get a nice coating on each side and get them nice and brown, and then we'll flip them over. A couple minutes now, like I said, we're not going to go too long. We're not looking to cook these all the way through. We just want to get a nice golden brown finish on them. And we'll let these go, again, a couple minutes because they're so thin. We don't want to cook these through. And then we'll continue on and we'll get the other 3 done. And that's basically all that's needed when you're doing this to actually in a pan. Everything else is going to go in a slow cooker. Okay, now that we're done here, we're going to take these out. And again, we're just going to set these to the side. Because what we want to do now is we're going to take and we're going to leave everything in this pan. We don't want to waste anything. So we're just going to slide this to the side for now, because what we want to do is we're going to cut up 1 large onion into nice little strips. Okay, I'm just going to take a large onion. I'm just going to go right down through it. And again, this doesn't really matter how you do this. You just don't want really, really thick pieces. So we're just going to go right on down through. Because don't forget now, we're going to slow cook this. And these are going to get not only cooked in a pan. Once we slow cook these are going to get even softer. So we don't really have to go too worried about it right now. We just want to make sure that we don't have really, really huge chunks. But once we get this cut up, what we're going to do is we're going to take this, and now what we're going to do is we're going to put this in a pan. We're going to use the same pan that we just cooked our steak in, and we're going to leave all that goodness in there with the oil. We're not going to add anything to it. We're just going to cook these onions now. Now that we have our pan heated back up, and we left the oil in here, and we left all the little bits from the steak, all we're going to do is we're going to take our onions, and we're just going to add them right to our pan. And we're going to end up cooking these for about 5 to 7 minutes. We want these to get soft. We don't want these, obviously we don't want them to fall apart. We want to get them nice and soft. They don't have to be translucent. Like I said, they are going to slow cook now. But we'll get these cooked up. But we'll let these cook up now, and we'll cook these down. Once I get these started, and I see that they're starting to soften up, what I like to do, because you do end up using a lot of the oil that's in the pan, and instead of using a lot more oil, I like to take 2 tablespoons of butter and just add in non-salted butter and let that melt in. I think it gives a nice taste to the onion, and it adds a little bit more oil that I want to use. We'll just let these mix up. We'll get these a little bit softer, get that butter melted down. Once we get our onions to, they're nice and soft, you can see they're not stiff. We got them a little bit of golden brown on them. We're going to stop these, and now we're going to set everything to the side, and we're going to make our gravy, and then when we add all this, we'll be able to combine into our slow cooker. Okay, we have all our steps done now, and believe me, it is a lot easier when you're not worrying about doing everything for somebody else. When you're just at home in your kitchen and you're making this, you don't have to worry about putting everything in separate dishes. You can dump this and go. But what we're going to do now is we have our beef done, we have the onions cooked. We're just going to quick mix up the gravy, and then we can put all this together. So what I started with first is I have 1 beef bouillon in this cup to start with. You can use the bouillon cube, you can use the powder. You just want the equivalent of about 1. And we're going to take 1 cup of chicken stock, and we're just going to put that right in. And to that, we're going to add 1 cup of beef stock. And we're going to put that right in. We're going to add to that 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. And if you've never used it before, we do this because this is going to add a thickening agent. It's going to help our gravy get nice and thick. And we're just going to mix this up before we go any further with anything else. And now to that, we're going to add our onion powder, more garlic powder, and we're going to add Worcestershire sauce. And And we're just going to make sure this is all mixed up real well. I mean, it's going to get mixed up really well when we put it in here, into our slow cooker. But we just want to make sure that we get everything nice and incorporated. And once we do this, what we're going to do is we're going to take this now, and we're going to take our slow cooker, and we're just going to take this and put this right into our slow cooker. And depending on the size of yours, I mean, it could be a little different. And to that, we're going to add our onions that we made right in. Just get that a little mix up so we get these nice and mixed up. And to that now, we're going to take our steak that we had, and we're just going to gently lay these right in. Just going to put these right in, and it's all right if you get one on top of each other, because what we want to do is we want to make sure that these are covered top and bottom. And once they start to cook and we get some steam going in here, they'll cook very well. We're just going to put these right in like this. Now, if you get to the point where obviously you have too many in here, what you might have to do is as these cook, you'll have to every once in a while take a spoon and put some over them. Don't flip them if you can help it, because like I said, they will steam and they will cook. They'll cook down a little bit. But now what we're going to do is we're going to take this, we're going to put a lid on it, and we're going to cook this on low for about 4 hours. So that's all there is to this recipe. So we'll cook this for 4 hours on low, and we'll see you when they're done. All right, we are back. We've had this slow cooking for about 4 hours. So all we have to do now is we're going to be careful taking the lid off. Because obviously it's going to be hot. You can already smell the onions. You can smell, believe it, you can smell the chili coming out of that. And it's not a whole lot. You get the big smell of the beef right away. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take one of these out. And be careful that we don't wear any of it. Now remember, this is steak. This is not ground beef. So this is not a Salisbury steak. This is actually regular steak. And remember, I told you, when you make it like this, you don't need a knife. And that just cuts right through that meat. Beautifully cooked on the inside. The gravy, you could tell, like I said, you could smell the onions coming off of it. It's nice and tender. It's fork cuttable. You don't have to worry about a knife. You can do this, put it in the morning, let it go, do whatever you have to do during the day. I hope you like this video. I hope you'll like and share with your friends. And by all means, subscribe to the channel and hit that notification button so you know when we do this again. And I will see you next week.